Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searle with Insider Perks Modern Campground. Excited to be here with you. A little bit of a different background today in British Columbia on Lake Shuswap. I don't know if you can see the lake, but it's a really nice view from here. Let's fill it up so you guys can all see that and be jealous for a second. But yeah, excited to be here. We got a couple special guests. As my phone does circle the search when I type it, so that's a new feature on Google Pixel. Self-promotional if you want to do that. Welcome, Landon Dory, one of our special guests. John Van is going to join us as a new recurring guest in this episode. Excited to have you here, John. And Jeff Hoffman. And we've got a few other people who are traveling this week and can't make the show, but we're going to have a good discussion today. We're going to talk about all kinds of different stuff, and we'll see what comes up. So let's briefly go around the room and just have everybody introduce themselves real quick. You want to start, Jeff?
Sure. My name is Jeff Hoffman, and I'm the partner and founder of Camp Strategy. We work with RV parks and campgrounds almost exclusively, doing valuations, operations, pretty much anything to do with the campground industry, we report on.
Awesome. Thanks for being here as always, Jeff. Landon?
Give me a second. I apologize. My computer's ringing right when you said my name. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Landon Dory. I am the founder and CEO of North Star Brokerage and Advisory. We're an outdoor hospitality focused company. Brokerage is the name of our game. Advisory is something that we've tacked on in recent years to help owners run a more profitable business today that's worth more tomorrow. We also just started and are working to build up our North Star Owners Collective, which is a community for campground owners across the country. It's exclusive to owners, and that keeps the salespeople and the brokers and that type of thing out, except for myself. So happy to be here, and this is a cool and unique opportunity for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, man. John?
Yeah, hi, I'm John McMahon. I'm the operations director at Camp Door County in Sister Bay, Wisconsin. We have a high-end adventure resort, mountain bike trails, a lot of primitive and RV camping, cottages, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here, John. Excited to learn more about your property and what you have going on down there. Wisconsin's beautiful. I spent as much time there as I would like to, but I do go to the Waco show, well, usually every year. I don't think I'll make it in next year, but that's too far away.
Yeah.
We was there last year. We sponsored and brought a musician with us and everything, so. But I haven't been as further north than I'd like to be in Wisconsin.
Yeah, you were in Stevens Point, I think, when you went to Waco. Yeah, and we're northeast of there, about 2.5 hours. We're out on a peninsula that's surrounded by Lake Michigan from the east and the Bay of Green Bay from the west. So we have a really unique climate. We have more shoreline than any county in the United States. We have more state and local parks than any county in the United States, and we get 2 million plus visitors a year. So it's a very tourist seasonal location to be in. So it fits our model really well.
Very nice. I think the furthest north I've been in Wisconsin is, and maybe this is north of central Wisconsin. I don't know. I'm not looking at a map, but Warren's, Wisconsin. We used to work for the Jellystone up there.
What's the name of it? Lawrence?
Warren's.
Warren's. I'm not familiar with it.
Big cranberry festival up there.
That's in the that's on the west side of the state.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever been to Green Bay either, which is really interesting. I traveled the country for like 4.5 years. Anyway, we'll digress. We'll talk about our travel stuff offline sometime. Jeff, so normally we turn this over to our recurring guest, kind of first question of the show. Jeff, you're the only, John, you're a new recurring guest, so I guess you can weigh in on this too. Is there anything that's come across your guys' desk that you think we should be talking about on this show since we last got together about a month or so ago?
Well, yeah, actually what I'd like to do, because Landon is a new guest, and I'd like to talk to him about the real estate industry in the campground sector, the RV sector, where he sees it going, what he sees with valuations, because in my research and what I've been doing lately, I'm finding a little bit of fallback on pricing and a little bit wanting to get a little bit higher cap rates because everybody's afraid interest rates are going to go up. And I kind of agree. So I'll let you start off.
Well, let's do
Over to
this.
me.
Can we do this for a second before, because I want Landon to talk about that. Yes, I said that before the show, right?
Okay.
But can we set the stage for the people who are watching the show? Because we have a lot of people who are watching the show who are just campground, obviously campground owners, operators, suppliers, vendors, stuff like that. But I don't know if any of them are familiar with like maybe they've never sold their park. Maybe they don't know how valuations work or how appraisals work or how they should be valuing their sites or their properties, or if that's relevant or has changed in 2026. So maybe like Jeff or Landon, both of you either are qualified, right, to answer this question. But maybe we just start there, not in a long exercise that takes 30 minutes, right? But like a brief overview of how you would begin to get started understanding the worth of your campground in 2026. And does the economy impact that or not? Does the demand for camping or the type of camping they offer impact that or not? Like, what
Okay.
has anything changed since COVID? That kind of thing.
Right. Why don't we take a look at both ways? Because I generally am valuing campgrounds for the buyers and investors. And Landon, I think you probably are on the opposite, not quite opposite side, but generally you're getting listings and trying to sell them. So why don't we approach it from two different sides? And I think it'll make an interesting discussion.
I would agree. Yeah. Why don't you start us out with how you look at it from the buyer's perspective, and then I'll hit on what we do in working with a prospective seller.
Okay, that'll work. Generally, with a buyer, it doesn't matter what you did to your campground, how much capital you put in. It does matter what the campground looks like, because if I have to put a lot of CapEx, or if I have to spend a lot of capital to get it back up into shape, that means I'm going to want a higher cap rate because I'm putting more money in, and I also will probably ask for a lower offer price because I'm going to have to put capital in.
Okay, sorry, just to interrupt you, for the people who are totally ignorant, cap rate in 10 seconds.
Okay. The cap rate is the amount of return that I expect to get off of the campground. And it's going to be based off of a percentage of your net operating income, which is revenue minus expenses, take out depreciation and interest, or amortization if you have it, but most campgrounds don't. And we end up with the NOI number. And that's my area that I work in. Everything is based off the NOI, and that's kind of where I was headed. You can have the prettiest park in the world, but if your occupancy is 13%, it's not pretty to me. I'm strictly going on your financials when I'm valuing a park. We'll add some for some aesthetics and location, because as you know, in real estate, location is everything. And the potential for value add. That's the other thing that we look at, is how is the park operating now? How can it operate better? And what, through our expertise, can we add to this property that's going to make it worth more money? We normally try not to pay for that value add because that's our equity gain. So in a nutshell, that's my view of valuation.
So what are some examples of value adds for people? Like, is there a fixed list for our industry, or could a value add be like John's great beard, or?
That's expensive.
Yeah, that would probably add something if he stays.
Okay.
But we've got to carve the company's initials in it.
But give people some examples, right? And the reason I'm asking this is because if you're the owner of your campground, then
Yes.
Obviously your value adds, and I know we're not talking about exactly the same thing here, right? With what you're describing.
We are.
Your value adds and what your valuations are and how you perceive things and all that is way different than how somebody else comes in and perceives them. And then also, is there a value or perceived value of what I could do with this property that maybe the owner's never done marketing or never had a good website, or, right? Does all that come into play?
Yeah, and that's what we evaluate when we're looking at this, to see if there is value add. We look at the marketing, we look at their rates, we compare demand for the industry as we break it down by region, what the demand is for that city or attraction. Then we take a look at what percentage they're getting out of that versus everybody else. If they're getting the standard percentage, then if they're not marketing and they're not really qualifying the park, then there's a reason to think that we could draw some more demand to that park. We also look at all the rate structures, all the ancillary income, how that might be affected, what it can bring in. And on the opposite end, if I was working with a seller, we want to work like a year or two ahead with a seller to get this income onto their books. And the same thing, and I preach this to them, if you're not reporting all of your income, that 10,000 that you might think is, you're saving 25% on taxes, by taking that out, you're knocking $100,000 of value or more off of your park. So if you're going to sell, report all of your income, because if I show up your park and I can't prove those numbers, if it didn't go through a checkbook, it didn't go through some credit card, it doesn't exist. You can tell me you took some money, but if I can't prove it, it doesn't exist.
Okay. Go ahead, finish. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, other areas that we can improve on are the marketing, and generally, with the way things are now, we normally recommend they take a look at an actual professional agency to handle marketing, because we know most people know just enough to get dangerous, but not how to truly market. You can marketing you can break down now into specific sections, specific people, specific income groups, people that actually own RVs. You don't do the shotgun approach anymore on marketing where you're just firing until you hit something. We're getting very direct. We're kind of using a rifle scope now instead of just blasting.
Which is good, because if you fire and just randomly until you hit things, you run out of ammo, like the U.S. military is apparently, right? No, sorry, that's a bad joke. Okay, we shouldn't talk about it. Okay, sorry. All right, so question for you, Jeff. So if I'm an owner and you said you wanted to work typically, or if I'm an owner thinking about selling my park, you said you typically want to work with them a year or two in advance. How does it impact how you want to work with them, or I guess, how does it impact them that there's an economy that is seemingly not headed in the right direction right now? Does that set them back 4 years potentially, or 6 years? Because it stacks, right? Like you want to start tackling a problem that you can tackle and have 2 years to tackle, is what you're saying.
Right. What's changing in the economy? We are having a bit of a flat, maybe down year in the camping industry. But what I've studied over time, in a 10-year period, we have 2 great years, we have 2 horrible years, and then we have 6 flat years generally. So if you're improving and improving, you're going above the average. So I would tell them, we're going to look at the average of what you've done over X amount of years. We project into the future what demand might be, because we're not going to have 425 gas forever. At least we hope not. We're going to have inflation unless they do something. So what's going to hurt his sale is if we raise interest rates. That means I have to be further away from the interest rate on my cap rate. Because what a cap rate is a spread rate between what you're paying in interest and what you want to receive. So if I can right now I can put my money in the Fed at I think it's now up 4.56.
That's 4.68 this morning.
Was it? Okay.
And then the Treasury started buying back bonds again.
Right. But I don't have, I can earn that 4.68 without doing anything. I get a check I don't worry because it's backed by the U.S. government and my taxes, hopefully. So I want to get a spread for that um, risk that I'm taking. And it depends on how comfortable you are with the risk. Some companies that can buy at a lower cap rate are well funded and have lots of revenue streams coming in. So they can go down lower on a cap rate because they know in 5 years they're going to grow that cap rate up to 15, 20 through just raising revenues. But your average mom and pop, if they're taking their money out of a 401k, where you know the average is going to be 8%, without you doing anything, you definitely want to get 9 to 10% because you're going to be working this property. It's not going to be a passive income unless it's huge.
All right, I want to come back to the rates and the 5 and 10 year thing, but we could talk, and then I want to make sure Landon and John have time. So Landon,
right. I can talk about this forever. So yeah,
I want to talk about the 5 to 10 year thing later, specifically as it relates to the big groups, because I don't know if that holds up long term, and also the raising rates versus inflation prices. Is that really making more money? So we'll come back to that. Don't let me forget, Jeff. You're young and I'm old, and you'll remember. Landon, go.
What do you always got to get that old thing in there, don't you?
I said I was old, man. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Look at my gray hair. You see that? I'm bald too. I have nothing. All right. Sorry, Landon. Go ahead.
No, you're good. First and foremost, Jeff's spot on with everything that he's saying. These properties are not valued based on how much money you spent on them or how much you love it or what you think it should be worth. It's based off of what somebody can actually walk into a bank and get financing for. And whether it's an SBA loan or a conventional loan or some other type of debt, you're capped at a certain point because banks require a couple different things. There's LTV requirements, that's loan to value. There's a debt service coverage ratio that's a requirement. And if you're not within the realm of where a bank needs you to be, then even if you like the property as a buyer, you want to own it, you put a contract on it, and you start down that track, the bank's going to come in, look at it, and veto it if the cash flow coming in off the property is not enough to cover the debt service on the property. So that's a very critical thing, and that's things that a lot of people miss, especially when they've dumped a lot of money into the property to improve it, but those improvements were on maybe non-revenue producing things like infrastructure that just doesn't produce any cash flow for the business.
I know you're just getting started, but tell me, I'm just curious for the people out there, is the line moving because of this economy? Are the banks moving the line at all? And how does that impact the market?
The banks, from what I can tell, and I talk to a lot of banks are becoming more skittish of this asset class. This was a darling asset class in the 2010s leading up to 2020. A lot of private equity money moving into space, a lot of new owners wanting to be in the space, a lot of new developers trying to get into this space. And everybody had this theory and this business model and this pro forma of what they thought was going to happen with the space. And then COVID hits. And then everybody's theories got proven right. Every single park, the majority of parks had some of their best years between 2020 and the first half of 2022. More people were traveling. The cost of capital was extremely low. And that means that more people started building these things, more people started buying these things. And especially for the people that were buying them, if you bought with 4% interest and you bought maybe a 6% cap rate park, you're finding yourself in a tough spot right now because, especially right now in 2026. So 2021, a lot of people have paid a lot for these types of properties. Fast forward 5 years, a lot of people are facing their bank maturity dates, and now they're having to play the pretend and extend game with the bank, and they either need to refinance at rates that are probably, depending on your park, 6.5 on the very low end, up to 7.25 on the higher end. And if you are making less money than you were before, which is pretty common in the space right now, that's a very difficult payment to make, especially if the payment goes up. So if you can't refinance, what are your options to sell? Well, in our analysis and our research, the market's been pretty down and to the right in terms of sales prices for these since 2022, 2023. Matter of fact, last year we underwrote and analyzed 78 parks just in Texas, and 68% of those parks saw both a simultaneous decrease in revenue and increase in expenses. So that profit margin for a lot of owners is getting squeezed in a really tough manner. So now we're in 2026. A lot of people are facing those refinances. There's plenty of people in the marketplace, many of them are our clients, who they can't refinance because there's not enough equity in the property for the bank to loan on them again. And if they sell, they owe the bank money because they can't get the cash out of the sale. So banks that are very familiar with this space have a much better lens into what the risk level is right now. And we're starting to see a little bit of pullback and a little bit more scrutiny in the underwriting. And then the banks that are not very well known in the space, or they don't have a large allocation or exposure to the outdoor hospitality space, those guys are getting hammered just as hard, but they don't have as much data to compare it to see if this is an anomaly on a single park basis, or if this is a more widespread problem that a lot of people are facing. And the reality is, especially down here in Texas where we're located, it's affecting a lot of people. And the thing that augments this and makes this a lot harder is the sheer overdevelopment that we've seen in this space, both in terms of people who've expanded their campgrounds and then people that have built them from the ground up. And there's a really interesting study that was done in 2018. I believe it was Horizon that put out the report for Texas. It was tracking, I want to say, 2,100 RV parks in the state of Texas. Well, we've got an internal tool that we're using to track the market as well, and we're tracking at least 3,800 operational RV parks in Texas right now. It's a 70% increase in about a 6-year time span. So there's a lot of things that are making camp ownership today way more difficult. And it's the reason why we started our advisory practice. We didn't want to be advisors because, again, I'm not an operator. I just see a lot of businesses. But what Jeff said is exactly correct. If somebody comes to me today and says, Landon, sell my park, I say, sure, absolutely, I will. And then I pop the hood on their business, I start to look under it, and I see what's going on. And oftentimes there's a lot of things that can be fixed and changed with just a little bit more time and a little bit more intention. And if you don't have that time, you can't just solve those problems in a 6-month time span, because most of these things, these opportunities in your business for improvement, most of those things take time to implement. And then it takes time for that to be reflected on your trailing 12-month profit and loss. So it does take time to get to that point. Jeff hit the nail on the head there. And which is why, this is very much an operator's game. This is not an apartment complex. This is not a retail property. This is an operating business. And that's a double-edged sword, right? Because it means that you have the potential for very high highs and low lows. A good operator can come into a bad property and significantly outperform everybody else because he's got a better toolkit, he's got more experience, and he knows how to run better than a previous operator. And I encourage every owner out there, really, really take seriously your operations, really take seriously how you're running your business, and be a little bit comforted by the fact that even at the highest level, the institutional level for the owners that have these types of properties, even those guys have some pretty gaping holes in their business models. And just a little bit more attention and a little bit more knowledge can help fill that. And that's everything from the financial literacy side. That's everything from the operational side. Marketing and revenue generation is obviously key. Infrastructure, you can't ignore that. And all of that, at least in our practice, leads up to exit readiness. All of those things are decisions you make in your business today to run a more profitable business. But those are the same things that will yield you a higher exit value when you actually go to sell. So thinking about a sale, it's not something that's way off in the distance. No, you need to start making those decisions today. Even if you're planning on owning and operating your park for the next 20 years, install these practices in your business today, because not only are they going to help you run a more profitable business today, but it's going to yield you a higher valuation when you do go and exit.
I don't want to take this in a negative direction, but I have one specific question, and then we'll kind of flip back to the positive related to what you just said about the overbuilding in Texas and the cheap money for a while. Is it possible, and Jeff, maybe you want to weigh in on this too, is it possible that because of the cheap money and because of the overbuilt aspect of certainly not every area, but Texas and a few other places, is it possible that COVID is going to drive our own mini version of the subprime mortgage crisis in 2008 in RV parks?
It's an interesting way to look at it. I don't know if I would say yes or no on that because I don't have the crystal ball. But what I can confidently say is that valuations have been down year over year. And I think that this year and the next probably 18 months are going to be pretty defining for property valuations, because of that debt maturity is affecting a significant portion, small comparative to the total sample size, but a significant portion of parks have refinances that they're having to deal with right now. And if those parks sell, they're selling on an NOI margin that's been squeezed harder over the last 4 years than ever before in history. Every time one of those properties sells, it puts a pin on the map right there for what value is, either on a cap rate basis or a price per pad basis. And then everybody after that who's going to value a park, be it a broker, a buyer, a lender, is going to look back at that comparable sale and say, well, that's a comp. I'm going to use that comp for your valuation. And comps are comps. I mean, these businesses are all so different that putting any of them in too tight of a box is kind of a fool's errand. And it's just wise. So you have to take every single valuation, put it in its own silo. What is this property? How is it producing revenue? What type of revenue is it? Is it recurring revenue? Is it one-time revenue? Is it cost of goods sold type revenue? What is it? And then you look at it on an individual basis then. But no matter what you do, you always get to the point where no seller, no owner, or no broker sets the price for a property. Something is only worth what somebody else is willing to pay, and somebody else can only pay up to what a bank can lend them unless they're using seller financing, some other creative structure, or paying cash, which is just a dream buyer, but those are few and far between.
And as those parks come to market at potentially lower or higher rates, but lower in this direction that we're talking about, that in some ways artificially can set a cap. Is what you're saying? Obviously, you still evaluate it individually, and it could exceed that on a micro level, but on a macro.
It puts a lot of data against you, is what it does. Because you don't have to go back too far. 2021, go look at the comparable sales. Some of the properties that sold just make absolutely no financial and economical sense. But they were
like it's like the Cleveland Browns giving Deshaun Watson all the guaranteed money they did. It's like that.
God.
Right?
Good God, leave me alone.
It's exactly like that.
Okay, sorry.
We still got to suffer with him. Leave me alone.
People basically running up to the teens and then 2020 to 2021, the trend was hot up and to the right. Okay. And a lot of people made purchase decisions based on the belief that that trend was going to continue. And then what happens in 2022? COVID's basically over. Down here in Texas, it was definitely over. So people stopped traveling as much because they got back to their day-to-day lives. And then what happened in Q2 of 2022, or basically end of first half of 2022, the rates jumped up for the first time. So now you have fewer people traveling. That's fewer revenue for parks, or less revenue for parks. And then you have all the new competition, and interest rates go up. So that's just taking a hammer to what these things are realistically worth. So a lot of people, what they did is they just didn't transact if they didn't have to. There's a belief that this is a blip, or next year will be better, or they say, gosh darn, I really need to focus on my operations or my marketing because this year was way worse than last year. But that's been the song that's been sung since 2022. And I think that 2026 is a defining year. I think that if there's a floor, we're very close to it if we're not sitting on it right now. And I'm very interested to pick Jeff's brain on his belief on that 6-year timeline of flatness. I hope it's not flat for that long. But
so let's do that, and then I want to get to John. But so my last question for you though is, I don't know if that's a floor. Maybe this is more of a statement than a question, but we'll see where it goes. I don't know if it's a floor, because I see when I talked about subprime, I see a perfect storm here coming for campgrounds. Some, right? But let's say you're in a position where your 5-year is renewing and you're faced with higher interest rates, and you're also faced with lower demand in 2026, higher diesel prices. The trend seems to be heading that way for 2027 if I step back and look factually at the economy with my emotion out of it, right? So I think you're headed toward a perfect storm of, like, I don't know that 2026 is the floor. I think it might get worse on a macro level, not on a micro level.
That's a good distinction to make. And it very easily could. My hope is that it doesn't. But that's why I tell people this is an operator's game. You can out-operate your competitor right down the road, even if they have an identical park, because this is such a dynamic business. So what everyone needs to be focusing on right now is just running the best possible business that they can, because that's what's going to affect your cash flow today. Your value only really matters when you go to transact or when you go to do some sort of capital event like a refinance. But today, just focus on running the best business you can. Get really tight on who your customer profile is and how you acquire them. Get really tight on how you run your staff and run your teams and run run the operations of your business. Really think critically about your infrastructure. There's infrastructure decisions you have to make as an owner. Do you make the infrastructure decision that's going to generate revenue? Like in Texas, it's hot. Site covers are one of the highest ROI things that we see people do. Up in you guys' neck of the wood, it's less valuable because it's not as brutally hot down there. Or do you make the revenue decisions that's going to give you a lower operating cost for the next 5 to 10 years? Better roads, better infrastructure, higher quality materials when you do installs. Those are decisions that owners are having to make. And you really make that with whatever your end goal is in mind. If you're wanting to sell in 2 to 3 years, you need to be making improvements that are going to generate revenue now. If you're planning on a 20-year hold, you need to be thinking about durability long term. And it's a different business model, but it all falls under the same umbrella of just running the best possible business that you can run in your individual park or your portfolio.
Jeff, I know I said I was going to go to you, but I think that's a perfect transition actually to John to talk about operations, because
Yes.
I think we've talked on this show many times before about how, yes, that the world is wide open for RV park, campground, camp resort owners to actually focus on operations, because on a macro level, there are certainly lots of micro operators, but on a macro level, I'm of the opinion, and so are very smart people that I talk to, not all of them, but some of them, that we've been basically building parking lots since 1960 in the RV industry. And I think there's a ton of room for doing unique things. So John, take that from there.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's been a fascinating conversation because I've actually been in another market that had similar circumstances with like the RV market, except it went on a lot longer. So when I retired in 2012, my family and we built 2 breweries. And that's when the craft beer market was on this side of the curve. And when we started out in 2014, when we first opened our doors, it was all about expansion. It was about being distributed in every state and be distributed in Canada. That's what it was about. So it was about investing lots of capital into equipment. And when we started here in Wisconsin, which is one of the largest beer states in the world, we had 91 breweries. And when I say 91 breweries, anything beyond 15 was just a mom and pop garage outfit. When we got out of the business during COVID, there was 367 breweries in the state of Wisconsin alone. So, we quickly, and money was available. It was inexpensive. We saw a lot of growth. Too many people thinking that if you build it, they will come, and getting caught with an infrastructure that they could never get an ROI on. So there were all these breweries trying to sell to other breweries, to larger distribution companies. And at the end of the day, it was just too much everywhere and too much of the same thing everywhere. And it was always about being big. It was never about being profitable and run a tight operation. And I think that's kind of what the RV market, and I have to say the boating market is the same. During COVID, it just shot sky high, and now there's an abundance of used inventory, so new boats don't sell anymore. But anyway, so we were lucky when we got into the campground business. We had looked at it since 2012, and what we did when we planned is that we wanted to make sure that we had to have as little amount of institutional funding for it. So we tried to map the correct size for a lot of reasons. One, obviously, we needed the revenue in order to service our debt, and we needed the profitability to service our debt. We also, because we live in such a faraway place, you don't drive through Door County to get anywhere. We have an issue with staffing. We have to bring in a lot of J1s, or we bring in college students, or we get high school kids. But the downside to all of that is they go away. So you're constantly trying to retrain and rehire and hope they last through that season. Because if you lose in August, you're not going to find a replacement because everybody's employed. We have no unemployment in this area during the summertime. So the other things we did was we wanted to make sure that even though we were small, we had a portfolio that would attract the tent camper all the way up to the Class A's, and they want nice Scandinavian cottages. So we wanted to cover the gamut there, but we really focused on who we want our customer to be, and that would be 35 to 55-year-old. They own a Sprinter van, and they don't like to be in the same place at once all the time, right? They want to keep going. They're travelers. They're not on vacation, but they also have a good steady income. A lot of them work remotely, but they're software engineers, or they're doing things with these people have a lot of income. So we also looked at our market, and not all of our market except us, I would have to say, is simply a parking lot. And I think people are tired of paying for just dirt on the ground, and not everybody, but
the boomers are still fine with it, which is why the industry didn't change since 1960.
Right. And so we also could create. You could build more parking lots in Door County and sell them, but we didn't want that business like everybody else. So we did target a higher end market that's willing to spend more money, but also expects nicer amenities. But they are willing to pay for an hour in the sauna, even though they're there for 10 minutes. They're willing to pay a higher site fee because we have a beautiful lodge and a bar and everything you can imagine, right? We had we charged $10,000 for a seasonal site that's only 168 days long, but we did that on purpose. I had a guy last year on a Sunday call me to tell me that he'd never come to our campground because our prices were too high for him. And I said, and what else did you want? He goes, no, I just want to tell you I'll never come there. And I hung up the phone and I thought for a second, did I do something wrong? Are we doing something wrong? And then I went back to, no, you aren't our customer. And we didn't build it for every person. And I think the thing that we're most proud of is that kind of pre-opening commitment to not think about being big, but think about being profitable, tighten the operation, make sure that everything's locked down tight, learn from history, and then decide what do we do next. Do we expand our current property, or do we add a new property to our portfolio that is maybe not even in our backyard, but we could mimic that? And then, a couple of weeks ago, I think CampSpot put out their mid-season state of the industry, and the only campgrounds that are making money are growing are small campgrounds under 100 sites that have 20% of their portfolio is lodging, or the super glamping sites. Those are the only two categories. So had we overbuilt from the beginning and thought about, we would be out of staff, we'd be out of customers, and so I think the smart thing to do for new operators or new builders and owners is to look at exactly what Landon and Jeff were saying. You got to focus on your operations. You got to keep it as tight as you can, and you have to make those decisions on where's the best investment. Are we building for the long term? Are we building for immediate ROI? And I think we do a good job because of our history, and not in camping, but in other industries like this. It's really helped us out.
But like you said, I think it's important to emphasize again, like running good operations requires you to understand who you're targeting, and it's not everybody. Like we did marketing for 15, 16 years in this industry. I guess we still kind of do, but I'm trying to run away from it as fast as I can because AI is going to kill me, and I'm doing other stuff now. I have so many people still who call me on the phone and book appointments with me, and we talk about marketing, and lots of existing clients who work with hundreds of parks still for marketing. And the answer is always who do you want me to target? RVers. That's not an answer. What type of RVers? Where are they coming from? What do they want? Have you studied what they want on their site, or what amenities, or whether they have kids or don't have kids, or whether they want to be noisy or not, or whether they're traveling nurses or nothing.
Right.
And so that's what I mean. The opportunity is so huge, but you've got to figure out the opportunity, or have a hunch of what it is, or multiple different opportunities, and then target your operations toward that, right?
Right. And for the most part, you have to stick with your decision,
Yes.
and also listening if you start getting a trend, but you have to stick to that. It's like my example before. Why am I paying that much money to come there? Well, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be rude. I didn't design it for you. And so when we look at the operations of the business, we have to make sure. So our three priorities are customer service excellence, cleanliness excellence in all of our facilities, and an amazing landscape. So we take care of our property. So when we hire, we have three directors, adults, full-time adults that live here running those departments, because we need consistency. So they can hire all they want, but as long as that management team manages to our specifications and requirements, we can get that done in the long term. If we didn't hire for those three goals, I think we'd be completely lost. And I think a lot of people just hire because they think they need someone to do the educational programs or do kids programs or other things. But every time we talk to a new employee or even our guests or someone who's looking to come, and we tell them about, what is our mission and our vision. And I tell them that, here's the three things. You want to come here for these three reasons. We're the cleanest park you've ever been to. We're the most beautiful park you've ever been to. And you will leave thinking we're the nicest people in the world. And when we interview, when we talk to our banker, when we talk to our guests, or, even when we have articles written about us, those are the three principles that we're building this around. And if we grow too big, we'll never be able to take care of the facilities the way we take care of it today. We'll never be able to. Say it again.
We could probably have a whole episode on hiring, is what I was going to say. I thought you were done. I'm sorry. So finish.
No, I am done.
We could have a whole episode on hiring, because I feel like that's the same analogy as the parking lot on a macro level again. But I think there's a whole lot of people just putting a body where they can put a body and not worrying about what their specialization is. Are they good with kids? Do they have good communication? Are they cheery? Are they sad? Are they mopey? Are they whatever, isolated, depending on what kind of activity or whatever they're doing, which I think ends up being solved by robots at some point, where the robots do the mundane tasks, and then you can hire, like you're saying, your three great roles that are consistent, that require higher thinking, because in hospitality, you're never going to lose the guest touch, but that doesn't mean the guest touch has to be with every person or thing in the case of robots. It has to be with the people that really make a difference.
Yeah.
I want to dovetail off of something that John was saying here, which for people watching this, like this cannot be overstated, but the value of defining who your customer is, like your ICP, figuring out who that is, and then catering everything that you do around that profile or a handful of different profiles. Because what happens is, especially right now, like if we were in a
Sorry, 1 second. Can you explain what ICP is for everybody? Ideal customer profile, I'm assuming you mean, but just
ideal customer profiles. It's who you want to attract, right? It's everything that you just mentioned, from the traveling nurses to the this to the that, the other. And you can't create a park that caters to everybody, because what happens if you have everybody on your park at the same time? You've got the spring breakers, you've got the retirees, the long-term stays, the low-income housing. Those personalities will conflict, and you cannot possibly have the amenities and the staffing and the infrastructure to serve everybody nearly as well as you could pick one customer profile or maybe three customer profiles and be the best possible thing to that person. Because the mistake that people make is they say my occupancy is lowest it's been in years. What do? I'm a historically long-term park. And they say, well, maybe I'll just open up these 20 spots over here for transient campers, and we'll get some revenue that way. The problem that creates is, if you are a park that has predominantly long-term renters, maybe they're workers, maybe they're construction guys in town for 6 to 8 months on a project, whatever it is, someone that's working 12-hour days, when they come back to their trailer, they want to sleep. They want peace and quiet. And if you start opening up sections of your park, or even just individual spaces, to people that are in town, traveling through, or they're on vacation, they're staying up till 2 a.m, drinking beer, being loud, guess what? Both of those people are going to be upset when they leave the park, and your entire, the hospitality component of what you're doing, your guest experience, gets tainted by decisions like that. Another mistake I see people making is, when times get tough, they cut important things like marketing. They go down their line items on their P&Ls, and they see, well, marketing, what is this actually doing for me? Because they can't track their customer acquisition costs and their lifetime value. They say, well, we need to cut back on this. Well, that disproportionately and negatively impacts their top line revenue because now they don't have a customer acquisition channel. And that is so critical. So, John, what you're saying is phenomenal. And it's like, I'll speak from the brokerage side for a second. I'm not valuable to any of my clients if I'm selling RV parks and campgrounds, as well as office buildings and apartment complexes and all this stuff, because my attention gets spread too thin. Yeah. I don't have any value for any of those individual profiles. When we decided to just niche down on the outdoor hospitality industry, our value to every single one of our clients just increased significantly. And that's reflected in the relationships and the clientele and the value that we can actually bring people. And if anyone's listening to this, like, that cannot be understated. Don't fall for that trap of trying to service everybody and really questioning whether or not you made the right decision by what you said, like telling this guy you're not the right guy for us. It's a very important decision that an owner has to make. It can be a hard decision, but that really sets the tone for what your campground can be.
Yeah, I agree.
John, I like that you're brave enough to charge a seasonal rate that's in line with what your operating expenses are. Most people that have seasonals never run a formula to find out what they should actually be getting. They just kind of go with what everybody else is doing. Well, every park has a different cost structure. But it seems like
you see I don't think you watch Outwired very often. I don't know if you do actually, or how many people do. But Outwired, for Scott Barr and I were talking 2 weeks ago about that very thing, about valuations. We saw a post in Mark Kep's Facebook group where some lady was like, I don't understand how my neighbor is charging $500 a month all in for electricity and everything else a month for seasonal sites, when some of my customers who I charge electricity for are averaging $300 to $450 a month for their electric bill in Texas.
Yeah.
And so that's what you're talking about, though, on an extreme level.
Well, yeah, and those are the people that actually need our help because they have no idea of what they're doing in business. Sometimes their idea of customer service is not that good and can be improved. John, I think, you staff, it sounds like you're staffing somewhat heavily, so you give great service, but that's got to reflect in your prices. And I congratulate you for telling the guy, you know what, I'm too expensive for you. That's good, because I'm looking for a certain guest that appreciates what they get for their dollar.
Right.
And that everything's going to be clean, well kept, and not have problems. So I congratulate you. I love your ads. I see them all the time.
Well, thank you.
Yep. Just thought I'd let you know that your marketing is out there.
Thank you.
How come you haven't gone, Jeff?
I'm retired, so
You're not retired.
I stay home a lot now. Actually, I'm going to Wisconsin for an XCOM in September. John, maybe I'll try to come up and take a visit.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, right now. Yep. Well, it'll be
he's got one seasonal site left for $10,000.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a special.
Yeah. And I got a bridge they just built in Detroit that I can get you in on the ground level.
Yeah, I saw the lines the other day. No, thank you.
There's a really, really good research paper that was put out by Rafael Correo over at Blue Water recently about what this new market looks like in terms of like identifying your customer profile. And what he basically, the claim that he makes, and he backs up with his data, is that in this market where there's an oversaturation of rentable spaces that people could choose to stay, he's seeing the renters move in two different directions, right? So you have the super premium renters, the guys who want to stay at a park like John's because it's got the cold plunge or the sauna or whatever else amenities you got. And they'll pay a premium for that because they're not cost sensitive in the same way that somebody is on fixed income. They're trending in the other directions. They're never even considering John's property, because if they save themselves $50 a month in lot rent, that's real money. That's gas money, that's grocery money. And if you are a under amenitized park and you don't have much more to offer, then the only thing that you have on a competitive basis is either your location or your cost. And you can't control your location And you really don't want to be in control of your cost unless it's moving up and not down. So it's a really good paper. If anybody's watching this, go check it out. It clarifies that and crystallizes it. And it really
I haven't seen the paper, but Ruff is a guest on our podcast once a month, so I know he's super smart, and so I'll trust your judgment with that it's a really good paper. I assume he would put out nothing less. But we've been talking about that on the show too for a while, like not necessarily his paper, but just the K-shaped economy in general, and how people are being pulled up and pulled down. And I think there's like, man, I'm scared. I was about to say as fuck, but I don't know if I can curse on my own show. The SEC is here, but I guess I just can. So, but like the middle ground, like if I'm a middle of the road, let's just call it a KOA holiday, right? But like a middle of the road, middle class park, right? I'm really worried about where the next few years go. And then the other side of that too is I follow the economy probably more than I should because I have no life. But there's a lot of data in the last month's report that the K-shape, the top of it is starting to collapse because of the prices going up so much. Not completely, but like the spending is starting to go down.
Well, one of the things we have in this industry is, our top tier has disposable income, but our strong base is on the other side of that K. They're being affected by the economy right now.
Well, can I play devil's advocate for a second? Because I don't know. I used to think they had disposable income too, Jeff. But I think most of their wealth is in stocks. And I don't know that that's easily accessible disposable income. I think they're seeing their $150,000, $200,000 a year salaries on the upper side eaten into just as much as somebody else when your electricity is up a percentage and your hot tub maintenance is up a percentage and your insurance is up a percentage and gas and everything else, right? So continue, take that. I don't want to stop you from talking.
Well, I do understand that. The scariest thing that I look at is with the stock market. I don't, and this is just my basis, I don't see the value. It's got to correct at some point. I don't know what keeps driving it because
the AI bubble keeps driving it, but that's a whole other show too. So.
Yeah, but the AI value is only a percentage of that market, but it's driving.
It's like 60% of the S&P, man. It's like a big chunk of that market.
But it's driving people that don't have the revenue to drive up their stocks.
I know, but they're not accountants like you, man.
Yeah, well, eventually somebody's going to look at it just like they did in the 2000s and go,
only it's going to collapse 100 times worse than the 2000s.
God, I hope
ugly, not. Man. But that's another show, man. That's another show. Go back to RVs. You were making good points.
Well, it just that does affect it because I do think our people that have wealth are starting to wonder. They've grown and grown, but anybody that has more than 5 years of experience in the market knows that.
So, Jeff, in your opinion, does that impact if you make $200,000 a year?
Yep.
Does that impact your decision to stay at a high-end park versus a maybe middle of the road or lower end park, or does it impact your decision to just travel that season at all?
I think it's impacting the decision to travel at all because the people that are making that money, when they travel, they're going to go to John's Park.
They want the luxury. Yep.
Right. The other people that would go to the lower campgrounds right now, I think they're concerned about getting school supplies, paying for their kids' athletics and all of that. I have never seen August up in our area drop off the way it has. I don't think you guys have seen any of the reports, but August is the last 2 weeks are looking horrible. Labor Day is still good, but these last 2 weeks, everybody that I'm working with, it's fallen off the board.
Yeah, we track that a little bit. Like the OHPI comes out, but we look at occupancy data because we track it for 28,000 cities.
Yeah, we lost
parks.
Well, we lost 1 week that's normally good. Last week is normally a good week because everybody figures out their kids are going back to school, so they all travel that last week. And in our area, because of the rainstorms, it didn't come. So I wanted to bring
is already there, Jeff. Like if you look at the retail spending report in the U.S., we don't want to diverge into economics, but if you look at the retail spending report from last month in the U.S., you can see the top of the case like starting to tighten their spending. And that top of the K, that top 10% of people are responsible for like 50% of all U.S. economic spending. If they pull back 10%, we're screwed.
Well, don't pull back, Brian. You just keep spending
money.
money.
You know, 10%,
I'm down here in the other 10%ers. But Landon, I did want to bring up one point that you kind of hit on. There was a lot of these purchases that were done with very little money down, a lot of owner financing, blah, blah, blah. And they were getting owners to finance at rates of 4%, 3%. Blah. Well, now those balloons are coming up. And that owner wants his money because he can get more than that rate at a bank. But the value of that campground has come down, and they didn't have equity to begin with, or very little. That's really what's causing a lot of this. I've had some people that have just walked away, and I think that's going to happen more. Those may be bargains for buyers, but they're going to be at at more of a reasonable price than they were selling for. So
wait,
before you answer
I don't want to see that happen, but it's going to.
I don't want to see that happen. Before you answer that, Landon, like, are you talking about there's a danger of some of these larger groups that have come into the industry who have all owner financed or 90% owner financed potentially collapsing, or having them not as a large entity organization, but losing a bunch of their parks underneath them?
Depends on how well they're capitalized and depends on what their exposure is. But there's already, if I'd have known this question was coming, there's a great, first off, the creative financing, guru phase that we're in right now. I'm not going to say names, but I think it's very problematic and very predatory. And that type of structure is the most at risk because in some cases you've got two loans on your property, and oftentimes the owner is in a second position to a primary lender, so you get wiped out if something.
Yes.
But there's a really recent story out of Florida where a portfolio, maybe 8 to 10 parks that were put together under these creative financing structures, that these same economics that we're talking about started negatively impacting them. And it got to the point where they realized that it wasn't just the amount of work that it was going to take them to get back to a profitability standpoint. They looked at the numbers and said, there's no profitability standpoint. We can continue working and doing this and have nothing to show for it. So let's give this back to the bank. Let's wash our hands and let's go focus on something completely different. The bank doesn't want to own the park. And then the owner who's in a second position on that note, you get completely wiped out. So it is happening. That's probably one of the larger scale examples I've seen. If you're a big operator, you probably have a fragment, a sliver of your portfolio that's feeling this. I know several of them that have very problematic parks. But really where we're seeing this is on the individual mom and pop level. You had a single property, you made a single deal, and now that deal is going bad. I've got one client right now who is, I'll gatekeep some of the information because it's very, very.
Yeah. Nobody watches the show anyway. Don't worry.
He's $1 million upside down on his park. We've brought plenty of activity. We know what the value of the property is. We know what the market's opinion of value for the property is. And he's either facing a personal bankruptcy to get out of the situation, or basically liquidating his entire 401k and his stock portfolio, whatever other investments he's got, to make up that delta between what that thing sells for and what the bank is owed. And that's a very dramatic representation of what's going on, but that is not uncommon at all. I'm speaking primarily in Texas and some of the surrounding states because that's where I'm most familiar. But when I got plenty of brokerage friends in this industry. We kind of swap notes from time to time. It's very, very prevalent throughout the entire country.
Yep. And that's, I enjoy working with banks and the owners to try to come up with something where we can work it out, because I hate seeing people lose everything on a bad investment. Sometimes you can't get them, but maybe we can figure out how to make it less stressful and less damaging.
And these types of things aren't all preventable, but some of these things are preventable. And it just takes a little bit more knowledge in a specific area that might not be your expertise on the marketing side or the operational side. You can make some significant improvements.
Yep. And that's a lot of times when people bring me in, it's when right before the bank's going to get rid of him. And it's like, I need time to perform miracles. I can't just do this.
I mean,
how many of those deals were financed during COVID?
Quite a few of them. That's
a lot.
And
it's the same thing I was talking about in the brewing, in the craft beer world, that
cheap money.
You can blame us for all growing too fast, but the money was, they were begging you to take the money. They knew it was a bubble. They knew it. And they knew at COVID that boats and RVs and camping is going to, when things change, they're going to go down. The odds are they're going to drop, and they did. So it is kind of, it should make operators pay attention more, and owners pay attention to how they operate their company.
Yep. Well, the other thing that we don't, and it's starting to happen, and for a long time it happened in the hotel industry because they knew that we were overbuilt. That's why hotels are now going more to a stronger investor base to build and not financing, because the banks withdrew from hospitality as far as hotels for a long time. We're going to end up maybe having 7-8 strong banks that will finance RV parks, and those are the ones they're going to just butcher your statements, drill it down. There might be some fun money out there that is willing to invest, but
I need to go back and look at that, Jeff. I had a conversation with Claude 2 years ago that you just remembered. Probably, maybe it was Claude ChatGPT. I don't know. I've been using Claude since it first came out, way before everybody thought it was cool. But I had a conversation with AI 2 years ago where I actually ran those numbers for Independence Bank that helps KOA then. And I said, what is I think it was when the banks were collapsing, 2 or 3 years ago, right? What would actually be a trigger that would cause Independence Bank to collapse if RV parks went down this percentage, whatever else? I got to go back and look at that conversation and see how well it's held up.
Well, out of all of the banks,
they're one of the safest and strongest.
Oh my God, they are so conservative that there are so many that are going to fail before he does.
Yeah, for sure. I was just using him as an example because that's the name I knew. It popped in my head. By the way, if anybody has a hard stop, feel free to jump off. I just don't want to cut everybody off. So if you guys have meetings scheduled, please.
I've got a partner meeting, but that can.
No, you don't have anything. You just said you were retired, Jeff. You
can't
just make up something now. You don't want to talk to me anymore?
No, I said I have a partner meeting, but they can wait. I enjoy talking to you, Brian, and Landon, and John. I definitely want to come up and see your park. It sounds amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I just like, me, I love talking about the industry.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's be cognizant of everybody's time, though, and let's wrap up. So, Landon, final thoughts, and then where can they learn more about North Star?
My final thoughts for if anything that we're talking about today really resonates with owners, and you feel like you're on an island and these problems are isolated to you, just know that they're not. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to navigate a complex and changing market all the time. And just take a little bit of solace. And if I could make a recommendation to anybody, don't isolate yourself as an owner. There's the age-old saying that says you are a good average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Yet most people I know that own these campgrounds aren't talking with other owners on at least a weekly basis. Find some people in your community, find some other owners who have similar properties, and put together little groups, pods, calls, meetups, whatever the thing may be, because you can learn so much from other operators. And you have so much knowledge that you can give as an operator to other people. So don't isolate yourself. As far as where you can learn more about North Star, you can check out our website, nstarba.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram. We're everywhere. We're pretty easy to find. And then if that community concept really resonates and someone wants to check it out, we've got a community we've built specifically and exclusively for owners. Check it out. The conversations in there are it's just a breath of fresh air to see operators getting in a room, sometimes 25, 30 people at a time, and just talking about their business, sharing the problems that they're facing, the solutions that they found. And inevitably, there's somebody else out there who either already has a solution to that particular problem or is struggling with the same thing. And then those two people can kind of cohort up and keep each other accountable as they grow. I can't understate the value. We don't make any money off of it, really. It's just a place for owners and owners only to go build relationships with other people that are just like them.
Thanks for being here, Landon. I appreciate it. John, final thoughts, and where can they learn more about your resort?
Yeah, it's great to hear you guys talking about this, and it just kind of reinforces what we started to do, how we plan to build the company. And I think it would help any campground owner, operator to hear exactly what you guys said today. Yeah, I think that a lot of this would change how they look at their future and how they build profit within their properties. So I want to thank you guys for sharing all your knowledge.
Well, it's mostly all three of you guys. I don't have any knowledge. Jeff knows that. So I just show up. I can't even say I show up and look pretty because look at me. Anyway, John, where can they find out more about your resort?
Online at camp-door.com.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate you being here. Last but not least, Mr. Jeff.
Thank you. Landon, also through OHI, which is the National Owners Association, we have things called 20 groups that get together. We're kind of a peer support group, and you should take a look at joining one of those, joining OHI, joining your state associations. It keeps you from being isolated. I still own a campground, so I'll put it that way. We all have problems. We all have issues. Not everybody has to reinvent the wheel. On a lot of this stuff, just ask another owner. They probably have been through it. Where we come in as advisors is at somewhat the next level and try, the biggest thing is you can set all kinds of priorities, but you actually got to get them done. And that's what we kind of do, is help you get stuff done, take a look at your park, get the value back. I love working with people and trying to help. That's why I founded the business, because yes, I did retire and then said, just through my other things in the industry, I knew there were people that needed help. So that's why I started doing it. And I really enjoy helping people. That's why we do it.
Thanks for being here, Jeff. And yes, please do not try to reinvent the wheel. Flying cars are coming, and it's already been done.
Oh, Jesus.
Campstrategy.com.
Campstrategy.com.
Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of MC Fireside Chats. This afternoon, Scott and I are off again because I'm at the lake. We'll see you next week, though, for another episode of Outwired and another episode of MC Fireside Chats. Thanks, guys. I appreciate y'all.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Nice meeting you both, Landon and John.
Nice meeting you as well,
John. Thank you, Brian.
Go Bulldogs, right?
What's a bulldog?
Bulldogs, that's right.
What's a bulldog?